Long Island Medium star will perform in Evansville. The Long Island Medium will appear at the Old National Events Plaza this September. Theresa Caputo will be performing live at the venue on November 7th. According to officials, regardless of where they sit, spectators will have a chance to meet Caputo throughout the show. Caputo was the star of the television series The Long Island Medium and has appeared on other talk shows. However, it was a lovely fall afternoon in Huntington, Long Island. The leaves had turned amber and gold, drifting gently around the entrance to the local community center. Inside, a crowd had gathered in silent expectation of an event featuring none other than Theresa Caputo, the Long Island Medium. Her reputation for providing stunningly accurate readings had attracted a full house. Julia Harper, a young mother in her early 30s, sat among the attendees, clutching a worn photograph of her late son Eli. Her heart pounded with mistrust and anguish rather than expectation. It had been 5 years since Eli died of a rare congenital heart condition, and Julia's grief had not subsided. She attended the gathering not seeking answers, but in the desperate hope of reestablishing a connection. Theresa entered the room with her signature style, big hair, sharp heels, and an electric energy that permeated the air. After welcoming the audience, she closed her eyes briefly and raised her hand, as if plucking signals from the air. "I'm getting a very strong presence here," she replied quietly but confidently. "This is a child, very young. He died as a result of something heart-related." A murmur spread through the throng. Julia's breath caught. Theresa turned slowly and pointed directly at Julia. "You," she answered. "You are his mother, right?" Julia's eyes welled up, and she offered a slight nod. She went on, "He keeps showing me something, like a strawberry mark, on the back of his neck. It's small, but you used to kiss it all the time." Julia gasped aloud. Eli was born with a little crimson birthmark on the base of his neck, which mother kissed every night before bed. She'd never informed anyone, including her spouse, about something so deep and personal. "And he keeps whispering a name to me. Elijah." Julia broke down in tears. "Eli," she whispered. "Yes, Elijah, but we called him Eli." Theresa stepped closer, her expression softening. "He swears he's Oak. He's with your grandfather, the one who always wears suspenders. Eli says he still hears your lullabies and wants you to know he is sleeping soundly now. He is not in pain." The room was silent save for Julia's gentle cries. Strangers around her wiped their eyes. Before continuing, Theresa stated, "He says he's the breeze that lifts your curtains in the morning. That is him saying hello." Julia exited the gathering with her heart feeling lighter than it has in years. She no longer questioned whether the soul existed beyond death. She felt Eli again, if only for a moment, and her world made sense again. However, Barbara Corcoran, the legendary real estate magnate and Shark Tank star, found herself uncomfortably seated in a quaint, candlelit room on Long Island one lovely fall afternoon. The air smelled softly of lavender and sage, and across from her sat Theresa Caputo, the Long Island Medium, with her distinctive blonde hair piled high and nails that shone in the dim lighting. Barbara has always been wary of mediums. She was a woman who valued logic, mathematics, and negotiation. But something had been tugging at her heart recently, a feeling she couldn't define. She had lost her loving father many years ago, and while she had come to terms with his death, there were still times when she wished to hear his voice, to know he was proud of her. Theresa smiled sweetly as she reached across the table. "Barbara, you brought a lot of energy with you today," she remarked, closing her eyes briefly. "There is a strong male presence coming through. He stands quite straight like a military man. He keeps showing me a necktie. Does it imply anything to you?" Barbara froze. Her father had been a Navy man who always wore a tie, even on weekends. Her throat clenched. Theresa went on, "He says, tell my girl I've never missed a single episode. I watched her grow that empire, and I brag about her up here every day." She opened her eyes and glanced at Barbara, who was now in tears. "He is showing me a yellow legal pad." Was that something significant? Barbara gave a gasp. Her father would write her letters on yellow legal pads, full of wisdom and encouragement. She kept one framed in her office. Now, the tears flowed freely. "I still have the last letter he wrote to me," she whispered. "He died 2 days after sending it." Theresa nodded, her expression soft. "He says you already know what to do. You always did. But you have to hear him say it. He says, 'I see the little girl who sells rocks door to door.'" She never gave up. Barbara gave a low sob. That was her first commercial venture, a memory she had only shared with her close family. The room appeared to glow with warmth, as if love itself had arrived and nestled between them. Theresa reached for a Kleenex and gave it to her. "He wants you to know that he has been present at every important milestone, every contract, every heartbreak, and every success. You never walk alone." Barbara grasped her tissue, overwhelmed. "I did not expect this. I didn't believe it was real." Theresa grinned again. "Spirit does not lie. Love does not end. You came here in doubt, yet you're going with a piece of him you thought was lost." As Barbara went out of the reading room, the air felt lighter and clearer. She gazed up at the sky and muttered, "Thank you, Dad." For the first time in years, she felt heard. However, Margaret and Thomas Caldwell lived with an excruciating quiet in their hearts for more than 2 decades, a hole that no words could fill. Emily, 6-year-old daughter, went missing while on a family picnic in upstate New York. She was chasing butterflies one moment and then gone the next. Despite thorough searches, innumerable posters, and years of hope, there was no sign of her. The case finally went cold, but their sorrow remained as intense as ever. In the years that followed, the couple clung to each other, surviving on the power of their mutual sadness. They preserved Emily's room just as she had left it, with toys neatly put up on the shelf and a modest pink jacket hanging by the door. Margaret was sitting by the fireplace on a chilly November evening when she saw an advertisement for Theresa Caputo, the Long Island medium, on television. Normally, she would have changed channels, but something caused her to pause this time. The broadcast advertised a forthcoming special episode in which Theresa will assist families in reconnecting not only with dead loved ones, but also with truths buried over time. Margaret looked at Thomas with wide eyes. "Maybe this is our sign," she muttered. Skeptical but desperate, they planned a private appointment with Theresa Caputo at her Long Island home. Margaret sat across from her, clutching Emily's little locket. Theresa entered the room with her customary excitement, but she quickly became silent. "I'm seeing a little girl," she continued with softness. "Brown curls, a birthmark on her left wrist, and she's showing me butterflies." Margaret gave a gasp. "That's Emily," she said softly, her eyes welling with tears. "She adored butterflies, and she had that mark." Theresa nodded. She has not passed. Spirit informs me when they are on the other side. This toddler exudes energy and life. She has grown. She wants you to see something." With shaky fingers, Theresa went inside her bag and pulled out a photograph. "I never do this," she replied. "But a woman, an anonymous sender, mailed me this photo last week with a note saying, 'This girl needs to find her family.' I didn't know what it meant. Until now." Margaret and Thomas leaned forwards. There she was, a young woman in her 20s with familiar eyes and a soft smile. She looked just like Margaret's mother. There was no mistaking it. It was Emily. Thomas collapsed back into his chair, startled. Margaret began sobbing. "My baby," she cried. "That's her. That's her." Theresa stated that the girl in the photo was named Emma Wright and was adopted under odd circumstances in rural Pennsylvania. She had no recollection of her early life and had always worried about her past. Emma's adoptive mother had lately gone away, and among her belongings she discovered a necklace identical to Emily's. It came with a handwritten letter that read, "Your real name is Emily. I am sorry." Emma had mailed the photos to Theresa after viewing her show, expecting for a response. In the weeks that followed, DNA tests verified what everyone already suspected in their hearts. Emily had been found. The meeting was modest, heartfelt, and full of emotion. There were no cameras or news crews, just a family reunited by fate and the unseen bonds of love. The Caldwells had never believed in mediums previously, but they would be eternally grateful to Theresa Caputo, not just for the photograph, but for rekindling hope in hearts that had nearly lost how to believe. However, it had been about a year since Theresa Caputo, the Long Island medium, and her husband Larry had discreetly separated. The world had witnessed their 28-year marriage unfold through the lens of reality television, full with laughter, love, family dinners, and, of course, spirits from the afterlife. But now, the house in Hicksville was quieter, save for the occasional creak of the floorboards and the murmuring of those who had passed on. Theresa was in her bright kitchen, sipping chamomile tea and wearing her distinctive golden hair in a loose bun. The house, while full of memories, no longer carried the tension that had grown in the closing years of her marriage. Instead, it was peaceful, almost spiritual, a place for healing. "I still talk to Larry every other day," she said during an interview with Access. "We're in a good place." So how did she get there? It wasn't just the ghosts she connected with. It was her own spirit, which she had long ignored. Being a medium required being sensitive to emotions, energies, and stories that were not her own. She had spent her life helping people find calm after loss, but she had neglected to safeguard her own energy. Filming, touring, and readings had increasingly strained her relationship with Larry. Initially, the separation felt like a failure. Theresa would frequently sit on the edge of her bed, imploring the cosmos, "Why couldn't I see this coming?" But the spirits were mute on this one. Her personal trip required room. Not a message, not signs. Then came a day in early April. Theresa was performing a reading for a bereaved mother in Montauk. She felt a tug in her breast as she explained the symbols being sent through by the mother's late son: feathers, music, and flashes of light. It was the undeniable spirit of self-reflection. That night, she spent hours journaling. This is not about spirits, but about Theresa. About the small girl who once danced barefoot in her grandmother's yard, pretending to talk to angels. About the woman who fell in love with Larry because of his humor and how he made Sunday sauce. And about the woman she had become, strong, spiritual, and somewhat lost. Months have passed. Therapy, soul-searching, and even a silent retreat in Arizona were all part of her healing process. She and Larry began to reconnect, not as husband and wife, but as friends who had shared something important. They still celebrated their children together, shared family jokes, and texted about their favorite old Italian restaurants. They met one fall afternoon at Jones Beach, a location filled with shared memories. The ocean breeze flowed between them as they spoke, laughed, and eventually sat in silence. "You know," Larry continued, gazing at the waves, "it feel like an end." Theresa smiled, feeling the same sensation she had experienced during her most calm readings. "No," she confirmed. "It feels like a transition, and we are in a terrific spot." Her days are now filled with deliberate isolation, fewer public appearances, and a stronger sense of purpose. She still communicates with the dead, but more importantly, she listens to herself. And there, in the quiet nooks of her home, both the past and the future speak to her, not in grief, but in thankfulness. However, on a bright fall afternoon, the audience gathered inside the Meredith Vieira show's lively studio. The energy in the room was electric, not because of the cameras or the studio lights, but because everyone understood the day was unique. Theresa Caputo, the Long Island medium, was set to appear. People had traveled from all across the country, each with their own experiences, hopes, and grief. Some came for curiosity, while others for closure. Among them sat Emily Carter, a calm 32-year-old woman from Pennsylvania. She had never been to a talk show before, and she had no plans to attend this one either until a friend sent her a last-minute ticket. Something about it felt right, as if the cosmos had guided her to this location. Meredith greeted the audience with her signature warmth and charm. Theresa Caputo, dressed in her typical high hair and vibrant energy, took the stage to a round applause. But it wasn't long before she began pacing slowly, hands in front of her, eyes narrowing slightly, listening. "There's a father figure coming through. He passed away suddenly. He's telling me it was unexpected," she added, eyeing the crowd. Emily's heartbeat skipped. Her father, Richard Carter, had perished in a vehicle accident 5 years prior. He called to say he'd be home for supper, and then a police officer knocked on her door. Theresa's eyes met hers. "You," she indicated. "Your father's name is Richard, correct? He claims he never got to say goodbye. He is flashing me a locket. Does this mean anything to you?" Emily's eyes filled with tears. She wore a silver locket under her sweater, with a portrait of her father on one side and a letter he had previously written to her. "Never forget, you are stronger than you know." "Yes," she whispered. Theresa smiled softly, her tone softening. "He says he is proud of the lady you have become." He's referring to someone named Lily. Emily gave a gasp. "My daughter. She's named after his mother. He knows. He watches over her. He feels you did the right thing by maintaining her name. He claims you hold the brightness of both their spirits." The room was silent, yet the atmosphere was charged with emotion. Theresa halted again. "He showed me a treehouse. Did he promise to build one?" Emily simply nodded, unable to say. Her father always wanted to build a treehouse for her children, but he died before Lily was born. He wants you to know he still does. He is present in every laugh, climb, and scraped knee. The connection gradually faded as Theresa delivered a final message. "He says that you've never been alone, even in your darkest hour. I've always been there, just behind the veil." The play proceeded, but Emily's world had transformed. She left the studio feeling lighter, not only with answers, but also with tranquility. As she glanced up into the sky that evening, she muttered, "Thank you, Dad." However, Theresa Caputo had witnessed many things in her life, including ghosts reaching out, unresolved pain, and individuals seeking solace via her talent. But nothing prepared her for what transpired that foggy October evening at the Willowbrook Inn on Long Island. It began as a standard private session. Theresa was supposed to meet Caroline Moore, a middle-aged widow from Maine, looking for closure after her husband died unexpectedly 2 years ago. The inn was calm, with rustling autumn foliage and distant waves. Theresa always felt more connected in such situations. Nature had a way of blurring the line between the living and the dead. As she entered room 214, a shiver ran down her spine. The air seemed thick, as if the room had its own heartbeat. Caroline sat by the hearth, nervously wringing her hands. Theresa smiled pleasantly. "Hello, dear. Do not be nervous. Let us see who comes through." However, when she closed her eyes to focus, the atmosphere changed. Instead of the normal soft whisper or peaceful image in her mind, she was immediately assaulted with a torrent of images. A small kid in a red sweater racing along a hallway, an elderly man yelling for help, a flickering light bulb, and the sound of something breaking, glass, perhaps? Theresa gasped and grasped her chest. This was not Caroline's husband. This was something else. Something older. She opened her eyes and looked at Caroline, who appeared worried. "I'm sorry," Theresa murmured softly, attempting to control her voice. "This is not your spouse. There is another spirit here, a boy. His name begins with J. Jeremy or Jacob. He's showing me the fire. No, a place that burned down." Caroline went pale. "Room 214, she muttered. "They reconstructed it. There was a fire here 30 years ago. A boy has died, Jeremy Carter. I read about it in an old newspaper in the foyer while I waited." Theresa's heart thumped. He is not at peace. He's been attempting to contact someone for decades. At that moment, the lights flickered. Caroline gasped, and Theresa stood up. gently strolling to the far corner of the room. He claims he was locked in, that he did not spark the fire. People blamed him, but it was not his fault. Theresa's voice trembled. He's begging to be believed. Suddenly, the fireplace roared to life without being touched. A little burnt toy truck emerged on the fireplace, seemingly out of thin air. Theresa shouted and moved back. I've never seen something manifest like that before, she said, breathless. Caroline approached the toy with shaky hands. This is a toy vehicle. It belonged to him. The fire began in a cupboard, not near the fireplace. Everyone assumed he was playing with matches. Theresa went back to face the spirit. Jeremy, I promise you, we'll make them understand. You were not to blame. Warmth permeated the room. The stifling energy subsided, and Theresa felt at ease for the first time since her arrival. Jeremy's soul disappeared, leaving behind the aroma of smoke and something sweet, perhaps candy. A final indicator that a youngster has finally found rest. Theresa and Caroline sat silently as the fire crackled in front of them. That night, Theresa Caputo realized her gift had done more than just heal the living. It had saved a lost soul. And somewhere in the silent halls of Willowbrook Inn, room 214 finally slept sound. Hello, lovely viewers. Welcome to my channel. My name is Mina, and I hope your day is going well. If you liked the video, please remember to subscribe.